All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. As part of the Rankin Technical College AWD, or Application and Website Development program, and in particular the AWD 1111 class, which is .NET Framework with web databases, I have been creating a series of video presentations for the textbook that's going to be used for this class for the fall 2019 semester, that being Pro ASP.NET MVC 5. So far I have come in and I first did a very simple little Chapter 1 thing, and then I did another video on how to uninstall Visual Studio 2017 Community Edition and how to install Visual Studio 2019 Community Edition. I'm in the middle of Chapter 2, your first MVC application, and in particular I am on page 30 of this, where we're going to be building the form. Alright, so what we want to do is we want to go into that RSVP Form.cs HTML file, and we're going to want to put in some code. Let's put in the code, and then we'll come back and we will discuss virtually every line of the code that we're putting in. So this will become the body as far as what's in here. Alright, so we can get rid of this hello from the form and this div. Replace it. We'll have this. We're not done yet, and that's why we're getting some errors right now in the red. Don't worry about it. They should work their way out in a matter of moments once we put this in. Okay, well, one's still there, but hopefully we'll get it out in just a moment. Looks like they are all gone. So what are we doing here? Well, we're telling it to begin a form, and that'll end the form. All right, we've got 3 paragraphs, and these will each hold a label for the name, a label for the email, and a label, actually it'll say your name. Okay, it'll just say your name, your email, and your phone. These are HTML helpers, which will hold a text box for the name, a text box for the email, and a text box for the phone. Then we'll have another paragraph here that says, will you attend? This will have a drop-down list of which you'll be able to choose yes, I'll be there, or no, I can't come, and it'll tell you to choose an option. And if you say, geez, I don't get all that, let's try this. Let's do a file. Save all. We can run it right from here, right from the RSVP form. But let's go to our index again and make sure that we can still click our hyperlink and that everything looks good and is working correctly. So there's our hyperlink, and there's what we just created. You'll notice it's a very nicely styled form. Not only that, if we look at it, all right, doesn't really have to be responsive, but for lack of better words, it pretty much is. And under our options, yes, I'll be there, no, I can't come. Okay? So that's what we ended up putting in based on this. Again, everything that starts with the @ sign, that's all Razor code. So we've got some HTML, we've embedded some Razor in there, we're done with the Razor, so we're back to HTML. Here's the beginning of our HTML. There's the end of our HTML. All right. It says for each property of the guest response model class, we used an HTML helper to put in the correct input control. So this basically changed into this. All right. This works as it says because the form was strongly typed. and we told the model view controller that guest response is the type we want to render. So it was able to do a linking, so to speak, to figure out what it meant. This right here is known as a lambda expression. It says we want to grab the phone number and put it into X. And it says, don't worry if you're not familiar with it. There's an overview that'll be provided in Chapter 4. But we could have also done it like this. All right. It says here, I find the lambda expression prevents me from mistyping the name. Plus, it's got Visual Studio and IntelliSense. So after, hopefully at least, after a certain amount of time, it becomes easier for people to actually use it. Another convenient helper method, as it mentions here on the top of page 32, is the begin form. That generates the form element. All right? It says normally when applied like this, the using statement will ensure that the form is disposed of when it goes out of scope. It is commonly used for database connections. Why? To make sure that it's closed when the query is completed. So you close the database connection when it's no longer needed. It says here, instead of disposing of an object, the begin form helper closes the form element when it goes out of scope. This means that the begin form creates both pairs of the form element, the beginning tag and the ending tag. So it basically creates that for us. Okay, it says, don't worry if you're not familiar with disposing of C# objects. The point here is to demonstrate how this helper method is used. All right. Next, we jump into setting the start URL. And as it says there, Visual Studio will, in an effort to be helpful, make the browser request a URL based on the view that is currently being edited. This may not always be what you want. To set a fixed URL for the browser, select Party Invites Properties from the Visual Studio Project menu. So in other words, go up here, find the Project menu, select Party Index Properties, which is right near the bottom. Says select the Web section. And I've done it before, but I'm drawing a blank right now, so let's see. There we go. There's web. And from there, we want to check the specific page option right there. Notice it was current page, now it's specific page. We don't have to enter a value into the field. Visual Studio will request the default URL for the project, which will be the directive in the index action method of the home controller. So it is all set basically right now for the way we need it. All right. We should be able to close this now. All right. And let's do a file, save all, and let's just run it. We're not even telling it where to run it from. Okay, so it ran it by default from our home. Okay, but I believe now if we do come in and try to run it from our RSVP.cshtml, it should probably come up. There we go. All right. We're up to 10 minutes. I don't want to stop exactly right here. Let's see how much of this handling forms we can get done. All right, at least get a start here. I have not yet told MVC what I want to do when the form is posted to the server. As things stand currently, if you click the submit button, all it does is clear the values you entered into the form. That's because the form automatically posts back to the action method in the home controller, which just tells it to show the blank form once again. So the author says here, you might be surprised that the input data is lost when the view is rendered again. Basically because we didn't tell it to do anything with it. To review and process submitted form data, I'm going to use a clever feature. I will add a second RSVP form action method to create the following. A method that responds to get and a method that responds to post. Get, as it says, is what the browser does when you click the link. This will be responsible for showing the blank form. That's the get. The post will be responsible, all right, for rendering the form when you click the submit button. So it'll be responsible for receiving submitted data and deciding what to do with it. Handling get and post requests in separate methods keeps the controller tidy. In other words, the get is doing its job and the post is doing its job because the two methods have different responsibilities. So we want to go into the home controller and we're going to have to add this if it's not in there already. So let's start by going to the home controller. I don't see that in there, so we will put that in. It grays out immediately because we are not yet using it. But where we have our RSVP form right here, we're going to change this so it says HTTP get, and technically, just so you know, we don't even need to add that. We don't need to add that because get is the default action. But we're going to add here an HTTP post. All right, and rather than me typing that in, I'm going to grab the code from right here. Okay, and it'll return a view that just says, thanks. So we'll email the response to the party organizer. Ideally, that's what's going to happen then. Copy, paste that in. Okay. And as the author says on page 35, I have added the get attribute to the existing RSVP action form, which tells MVC that this method should only be used for get. Again, you don't technically have to do that because you put the post one in there. If you leave it out, it assumes it's get. The post attribute will tell MVC that the new method will deal with post requests. Also, the party invites.models namespace was imported so that we can refer to the guest response model without having to type in guest response dot every time. All right? So before we get into talking about using model binding, because we're making progress here, it may seem slow, but I'm doing it this way. I'm trying to, every time I think of something, I'm trying to go over it with you, because you're going to hear a lot of this stuff again and again as we are going in here. All right, so we're at 14.5. That's a great stopping point. We'll pick it up on using model binding in just a couple minutes.